Again, we initiated this educational initiative about a couple of years ago, and we've been trying to maintain. Right now, we're doing alternate month mental health station and the alternate month medical health issues. And we have been opening it to the public, and this program is open to the public. Today, we are blessed to have Dr. George Matthews among us to be able to present on this topic of connection between mental health and spiritual health. He is well known to our community, and he has presented once before to us, but for the rest of the people who may or may not remember, he is the medical director of Trust Point Hospital in Murfreesboro. It's a psychiatric hospital. He's board certified psychiatrist and addictionologist. He's been practicing here for about 30 years, and he was teaching in Vanderbilt before he went to private practice. He's originally from Grant Medical College, Bombay, and he has MD in psychiatry from Bombay and MRCP from London before he came to the United States. He has given me a lot of perspectives on his depth of understanding of the spirituality and his connection with his higher power has been so strong and compelling that I've been compelled to listen to him every time he talks about the spiritual well-being and the connection. And he has blended the spirituality in his healing art of psychiatry, and we have had a lot of interesting discussions on this subject. Without further ado, I will welcome him to present us on this topic and enlighten us and take us to the next level of understanding the connection between our own mind and our spiritual well-being. Thank you, George. Welcome you back to our health station.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasudev and Dr. Billiar, for the kind words of introduction and for setting up this forum. I am always excited every time I get a chance to speak about mental well-being and about spirituality. And here I have a chance to talk about both together. In the process, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do justice to both of them in the time allocated for this. So I'm going to try and carry out a shortcut. I am going to use this time to present a framework of my understanding of mental well-being and also of spirituality, and leave some time towards the end for everybody else to contribute their perspectives as well, so that we could have a meaningful discussion towards the end. For a long time, we've looked at mental illness and mental well-being as biopsychosocial dimensions, but I find it very useful to add the spiritual dimension as well, and to look upon this as a biopsychosocial-spiritual issue that needs to be looked at. And I've put the title as Finding Spirituality While Seeking Mental Well-Being. I hope this is an interesting journey that we could set out on. And I'd like to start with a lighthearted look at are the slides advancing?
No, they're not advancing. Just click on your space bar down and it will advance. Okay, now it's advanced.
Very good. This is a cartoon by one of my favorite cartoonists, Lynch. And here he depicts what life is like. We take an escalator going up, and eventually we are coming down. And it's usually on the downward journey that we begin to contemplate and wonder what life was supposed to be about and wonder if we missed something. So I find this a very nice reflection and would also look at yet another cartoon that I found really hilarious when we consider what life is all about. And of course, those of us who sang this song with children about doing the hokey pokey and turning yourself around, is that what life is all about? I can see the indignation of the guy who climbed up the mountain to find the answer, only to be told that that's what life is all about. But that, of course, is in lighter vein. Let's more seriously look at what life is all about. Usually, when we think of mental well being, we think of not having any form of illness because illness and wellness are seen as opposite sides of a coin. What I would like is for us to consider illness as disease and to recognize that all of us want wellness, we want to be at ease, and illness is seen as disease. So when we consider this, how do we get past disease? Most of us have encountered different illnesses in the course of our life. Hopefully, we have gotten past most of them, but especially as we age, we tend to keep some of our illnesses, and some of them remain with us chronically. Now, much as we would like to get rid of those diseases, very often they remain with us. And I want to already use a term from spirituality and talk about transcending disease. When we transcend disease, we rise above the disease. And yes, disease causes us distress, but if we can rise above it, we get to feel so much better. I'm reminded of an image on the television during the Gulf War when they had shown images of planet Earth taken from space, and the images looked so beautiful. Earth looked like a peaceful blue planet that you could fall in love with, while at the same time on the other channels, they were showing pictures of bombings and explosions and scenes of war. So depending on your perspective, we can either be caught up in the war and strife, or we can rise above and get a view of peace and serenity. And for most of us who are dealing with different diseases, the challenge is to rise above, to transcend our illnesses and states of diseases so that in the presence of illness, we can still get to a state of well-being. So the coexistence of illness and wellness can occur if we learn to transcend our illness. Beyond transcending illness, there is a now popular concept of positive wellness. So wellness isn't just the absence of illness and disease, but actually involves positive wellness, a sense of energy, a sense of joy, the joie de vivre that the French talk about and that we all have experienced. We've only to watch children to notice how joyful they are, how playful they are, how much they seem to enjoy life. Right now, we have a puppy that's just a few months old, and to see its joy is truly inspirational for us. Somehow, as we age, we seem to let go of that joie de vivre and take on a burdensome view of life and get bogged down with the challenges and struggles that we face. Positive wellness usually involves energy, it involves flow, it involves appreciation. And I want to mention this that, again, this might be an experience many of you have shared of trying to float a paper boat down a stream. And you notice that the paper boat floats a little bit and then gets stuck in some weeds or in some debris in the stream. After a while, it may dislodge from that position of being stuck and float downstream some more till it's stuck again. And that's sometimes very symbolic of life. In life, there are multiple points where we can get stuck or get arrested. But the goal is in moving on. Can we discover our flow? Can we find ways to move on through the stream of life without being stuck, without being snagged, without being arrested by particular events in our life, and let them hold us back from the journey and the joy of life? The next important part for mental well-being is to experience harmony. Harmony is the ability to be at peace, and this is a vital part of wellness. Very often, when people are asked what they want in life, they often say, I want to be happy. And we usually wish people happiness, happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy graduation. Happiness seems to be a goal. And we associate happiness with excitement, with celebration, with possessions, with travel. And all of that is very good. But using the psychiatric experience, I want to say that peace is a much more treasured goal and objective than transient happiness, and that you can't have true happiness without peace. And if you have peace, then you could have happiness. And I'm going to come back to the issue of harmony in a couple of minutes after we talk about the next item here, and that is positive anticipation. All of us have lived life in which we have faced challenges. The challenges very often lead us to anticipate that our future will include even more challenges. All of us have fertile imaginations, and in our imaginations, we project into the future. When we do that, we tend to use our recent past experiences and project that into the future, and often believe that what lies in store for me is more of what my recent past has been. Mental well-being requires us to have a positive anticipation of what lies ahead. We never know what's beyond the curve. But if we anticipate that something positive and good awaits us, we are likely to feel so much better and attain the state that we wish to have without being bogged down by the negatives of life. I want to return to the idea of harmony because that's a great segue into spirituality. All of us primarily need harmony with ourselves. Many of us, as we go through life, struggle with aspects of ourselves that we don't like. Many of us don't like our height or weight, our complexion. Many of us struggle with our hair or features or voice. And many of us feel that, oh, if only I could be different. But the goal, once again, is to accept ourselves and to move on, not to get snagged by the events in our life. All of us tend to carry with us burdens of shame and guilt for the embarrassments in our life. And everybody has it. It's very fashionable to say, I have no regrets in life, but everybody has regrets in life. And it's important to get past those regrets, not let them arrest us and keep us tied down to some event in our past. Similarly, all of us have also been offended by others in the past. And it's important not to be burdened by those feelings of resentment, those feelings of having been oppressed in some way, and to carry that bitterness with us, which only acts as a poison against us. So I would like for you to come to terms with yourself no matter how you are. Important point, all of us, regardless of what our past has been, are survivors of our past. No matter how bad things have been, we have survived and we are here today. Let's accept ourselves for who we are, where we are, and continue on this wonderful journey of life that we have the opportunity to take part in. Every day we hear of so many people who lose that opportunity. So let's recognize, let's appreciate, and let's celebrate that opportunity and be at harmony with ourselves. Likewise, it's important to be in harmony with other people. Once again, no two people are in total agreement. And very often there are disagreements, strife, conflicts, friction with others. And this very often happens with people whom we live with. The ones we share the most time with are the ones that we are most likely to have conflict and strife with. At the same time, those are exactly the people we need to be in harmony with, because the lack of harmony causes us to lose that joy of living. And it's important for us to make peace with those around us. Sometimes it's not just the people who are around us. We harbor conflicts that we had a long time ago. And even if the people are not in our neighborhood, not even in our state, or not even in our country, we still have that tension within ourselves whenever we think of them. And that robs us of that joy and that peace and that mental well-being. So let us seek not only to forgive ourselves for our shortcomings, but to also extend that mercy and grace to other people who may have offended us and live lives of peace and harmony. Similarly, we have the issue of circumstances in our life. Pardon me. Circumstances in our life very often set us back. Some of them catch us by surprise, and some of them hold us hostage. We don't like what has happened. We don't like what we fear might happen, and they consume our attention and steal the peace and joy that we so much want and need. It is vital that we accept our situation for what it is. Here, I want to introduce what is referred to as the serenity prayer, which says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oftentimes, we don't like the circumstances we face, but some reflection will reveal to us that unfortunately, that's our lot. That's what we have to deal with. And we can grumble about it, or we can accept it and once again look at the next best step. If we have that serenity, which incidentally is another word for peace, and leads to the harmony that we seek, then we have the ability to reach a very important goal. As you can well appreciate, there have been millions and millions of people who've experienced great hardships in life. One of the interesting findings is that some people have revealed that they have a special quality that enables them to deal with this hardship, to overcome them, and to move on. And that is vital, and all of us should seek that, because that enables us to endure, that enables us to overcome, and that is something that all of us very deeply need to seek, to find, employ, and practice as often as we can. That brings us to a very important issue, and that is harmony with the unknown. And this is where we step into dealing with spirituality. All of us realize that there is a lot that we don't know. All of us realize that, hey, the known world is relatively small compared to the unknown world. And we can be anxious about what we don't know, or we can accept that there is a lot that is unknown, but others have lived through that. We can too. We can try and equip ourselves to deal with the unknown, but being at peace with the unknown is, again, a very, very important part. The unknown occurs in space and time, because all of us are going to spend the rest of our lives in the future. And the future for all of us is a big unknown. If we can be at peace with it and have the attitude that no matter what happens, no matter what is there, I will do my best to be at peace with it, then we are likely to experience a better quality of life. And now we step into the spiritual part, and I am going to pose a very important but difficult question to each one of us. I want you to ask yourself, who am I? The who am I very often will bring up an image of yourself. You know what you look like, you know your name, you know your immediate relationships, you may know your job. But it's also important to try and dig deeper to figure out what makes you tick. What are you really all about? What is the essence of you? And that leads to an important question: where am I? What's the I in me? Where is it located? We've heard of terms of feeling with our gut or feeling with our heart, but neuroscience has advanced enough for us to recognize that all of those functions occur in our brain, in our mind. So I'm going to give you a rather disturbing and startling account of who each one of us is, and I hope you can deal with this. I want to tell you that each one of us are billions of neurons in a bony bunker. That bony bunker is in a cranial vault that we call the skull. And in each of our skulls are billions of neurons that constitute who we are. And those billions of neurons will never get out of that bony bunker. And all the life, those billions of neurons communicate with one another to get a view of themselves and get a view of the world each one of us lives in. I want you to appreciate this, that our sense of self resides in a collection of these neurons. Neuroscience has tried very hard to narrow it down, to try and figure out exactly which area of the brain is involved. At one point, there was excitement because they felt that a part of the brain called the periaqueductal gray was the site of self and consciousness. There have been other times when midline structures were believed to be involved, the cingulate gyrus. At other times, they thought of the parietal lobe, but none of them have satisfactorily located or identified the locus of the self, the locus of consciousness, or where exactly this sense of I, me, and self resides. If you can accept that we are this collection of neurons, I want to move ahead and state that these neurons then try to relate to the perceived world. I want you to try and imagine this. You go to a cinema hall, you sit in the theater and watch a movie. You realize that the movie is being played out on the screen, but usually they can be gripping enough to where you are absorbed, you are caught, and you believe that is real. But when the movie is done, you come out and you recognize that, hey, that was a movie. That was just a projection on the screen that made you believe that it was real. It was make believe. I want to tell you that all our lives are continuous movies being played in our brain, in our mind. And we believe that it is real because it is the product of these billions of neurons. Everything we see, everything we hear, touch, smell, taste, it's all the processing of things in the world outside of us, but it plays as a continuous movie of our individual lives. I hope you can accept that. And I now want to move on to the next extension of that, and that eventually each one of us perceives space, time, and organization that is vastly beyond our own. You have only to sit on an ocean side and watch the waves relentlessly breaking there. And we often wonder, gosh, this has happened for thousands of years before us and will continue for thousands of years more. And we are awe-stricken by the idea of time. Similarly, if we lie down somewhere at night and look at the night sky, the starry sky, we are struck by how extensive our world is. And the astronomers tell us that the world is almost boundless, and they have tried to locate places or lights that come from millions of light years away, and have also talked about time having existed for millions of years. We are struck and humbled by the vastness of space and time. And that leads us to recognizing that, gosh, there is an organization to this vast world that we live in. And that organization clearly is mind-boggling because we couldn't do the tiniest fraction of that. Hey, we can't manage our own thing, let alone manage a world like this. Which requires me to take a brief detour and talk about the physical and the metaphysical. The physical refers to everything that can be verified by measurement, everything that can be verified by all our senses, and the different physical tools that are available. So in the immediate world around us, we can touch our bodies, we can feel the temperature, we can touch different objects in our environment. All of that deals with the physical. But this complex billions of neurons in our bony skull also recognize that we have thoughts, we have ideas, we have concepts that can't be touched, can't be felt, can't be measured quite so easily. And these lead to the idea of the metaphysical world that we live in. And anytime we deal with the metaphysical, we are dealing with our individual view. And all of the metaphysical world is speculative because they're not objectively available for inspection. Each of us lives in this extensive metaphysical world in which we speculate. By the way, if some of you are wondering about examples of the metaphysical, let me give you a simple one. You sense that you love somebody who's dear to you, and you also sense that they love you back. It's a great feeling, but it's a metaphysical feeling. It's something you cherish, and you hold on to, but all of this exists in the metaphysical world. You have concepts of justice, you have concepts, even our memories and imagination are all metaphysical. That being said, I want to lead to the eventual conclusion that we come to, and that is that each one of us is an infinitely small cog in an infinitely big wheel. And that hits home when we consider the physical worlds that we live in, as well as the metaphysical world we live in. It's a very humbling realization, but it is also one that leads to further questions that we pose to ourselves and perhaps to others around us. The most important of those questions is, do I matter to the big wheel? All of us seek relevance in life. We want to matter. We want to matter to those around us. But metaphysically, as we grapple with the idea of the big wheel, we wonder whether we matter in the bigger scheme of things. Are we relevant? Do we have a role to play? And this is where our concept of spirituality really sets in. This is where we think about whether or not we matter. First of all, we wonder what holds this world together. I want to say that we are roughly divided into the group that believes that there is a God who created the world. It's also a subgroup that wonders whether that God really cares about us, whether we matter to the God that we believe in. There are others who believe that the world exists just by way of nature, and that nature has certain laws that keeps certain constants going, and we just have to adapt to those laws. Those who believe in a Godhead, that the big wheel is God, seek a relationship with God and consider what can be done, and also pose a question, is death the end? Usually these are questions that we reflect upon in the second half of our lives, though none of us know when the second half begins. But it's a question that is of great gravity and absorbs our attention. And we seek an answer to that. Where do we go to seek this answer? Most of us have been born into families that subscribed to a certain set of faiths, the faith of our parents, the faith of our families, our communities, and most often people continue to subscribe to that. Now that people have moved away from the towns or villages that they grew up in, they are exposed to a different set of people in their lives, and very often seek the input of their peers, and sometimes move away. We push away from the faith of our families and our communities, and some of us genuinely explore what the answer to those questions are and seek them. Is death the end? Is there something beyond death? Most of the religions do subscribe to life or something beyond death. I was very impressed by a story or an illustration of a communication of two twins in the mother's womb just before delivery. And one of the twins tells the other, "Oh my gosh, this is the end. I don't see any way out of this, but yet we are being pressured, and this pressure is going to lead to our death. This can't be survived. So goodbye. It was nice being with you these 9 months, but I guess that's life. Life is short, it comes to an end. There's nothing beyond this. This is a finality. This is where it all ends." The other twin, though, says, "No, have hope. I believe that there is life beyond this life in the womb. I believe that there's a brighter and better life that awaits us because I sense that there is a big love out there. And I have reason to hope that this better life will be there for all of us. And it's far beyond anything we can imagine while we are in here." An interesting question: is the life we now live like the pregnancy? And are we going to be delivered into a brighter, better life beyond what we consider death? And is death not the end, but a transition to something brighter and better? A lot depends on what we believe. I personally do subscribe to the view of the second twin and believe that a brighter, better world awaits each one of us if only we believe. Here's another cartoon by Lynch that I really love. It highlights a number of things. It shows that very often when we seek answers, we get more questions. And the suggestion that the answer is out there. It shows a hilltop scene out way up in the clouds. But it also suggests that the answer is out there, maybe in cybersphere, maybe somewhere out there, and it's up to us to capture it, search for it, and find it. Another important question. We search for the big we. We search for a comprehension of what this enormous big wheel is. Our abilities are limited. We believe that the big wheel has unlimited abilities. If so, can the big wheel reveal itself or himself, if we are to attribute a gender to the big wheel? Can the big wheel reveal himself to me in a meaningful way? And this, again, the answer is out there for each one of us to find. Once again, I personally believe that it can, it has, and that we deal with a revealing God. And here is a painting by Michelangelo, taken slightly in a different context to what the painter may originally have intended it to be. It's meant, I believe, most of the classic texts report this as Michelangelo's depiction of the creation of man and making man alive. But I also find this to be a pictorial suggestion of God reaching out to man who is relatively helpless and empowering us to recognize God, though I have absolutely no belief that that's what God looks like. The question we are left with is there really a way? So many of us have searched for the way. And as those cartoons indicated, very often we go through great lengths to try and find a sage, to try and find somebody who has additional knowledge, maybe spiritual knowledge, maybe religious heads, maybe somebody who has found the way. And if so, is it the truth? If there is a way, and if it is the truth, then I think we will all agree that that is the life for me. And I wish each one of us success in finding that way, that truth, and that life. Ultimately, what we are looking for is a sense of attainment of that goal. Once we find that goal, we reach contentment, we have peace, tranquility, serenity. In a lot of scriptures, it is referred to as samadhi, that ultimate state of having reached rest, your questions answered, your peace found. And that is the state of mental well-being. I would round up by saying the flip side of what we started with, and that is that we find mental well-being by seeking spirituality, much like we find spirituality seeking mental well-being. So the two are interconnected. I will stop here and hope that all of you will contribute from your personal wisdom and your personal experiences, and feel free to contribute to make this a lively discussion. Thank you for that.
Well said, George. Well done. Can you? I'm going to stop sharing your screen. Is that okay with you, George?
Please.
You can do it yourself. Yeah, okay. You can do, there's a way to click on that green button and stop sharing. Now, there are several ways you can answer the questions. One is you can go on the chat line, and several of you are used to doing that. Go on the bottom, there's a chat line, and you can type in your questions, and then we'll open it for audio sessions. As you notice that all of you are muted. So if you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself, identify your name, and please ask your question. Raise your hand up and ask your question. Uma, go ahead.
George, this is wonderful, but may I say, is it fair to say one needs to accept oneself as they are before they can, or while they can accept others? Isn't that the communication much better if one accepts oneself without too many expectations from others? That's the first question. And the second one I have, in other words, what we are saying is to attain peace, you need to get the equanimity within yourself and not look for something else out there. That means an introspection and peace. Peace is one thing that I would 100% agree with. So is it fair to think that way?
Absolutely right. We are first of all snared by our failure to accept ourselves as we are.
George, just come close to the mic, please. Just
We are at risk of struggling in many areas of our life if we don't get past that first hurdle, and that is to accept ourselves, even if many of those areas are ones that we are not totally satisfied with. We want to be different. Sometimes we feel we are stuck and can't get beyond our stage of being stuck. But self-acceptance is an essential first step to accepting others and the world around us. If I may, I just came across yet another slide that I had stopped before. We don't have to go back to the slide, but it was merely a slide of a goldfish in a fishbowl. And I put that there because one of my patients talked to me about how impressed he was by having been elsewhere and seeing that fish in a fishbowl. And he talked about recognizing that the fish was probably stupid because he didn't realize that he was in a small fishbowl and was probably going to live there the rest of his life. But he said, I was so impressed that it wasn't panicking, it wasn't anxious, it wasn't fretting. It seemed so relaxed and accepting of its life within that fishbowl. And he said, I need that in my life. I need to accept my life for what it is. And I think that's very relevant to what you just asked, Uma, because all of us need that self-acceptance. And sometimes our worlds may seem small and limited, but if we can live within it, we find great joy and a better ability to flow through whatever life we have rest for us.
Right. And the serenity prayer is the best, and that is the role model. I mean, that is the motto for me to get along, to accept what we cannot change. So thank you.
Any other questions? George, I have a little question. Rudra, go ahead. Go ahead, Rudra.
Okay, where is this?
Hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Well, outstanding, George. Quite a few words come to my mind as I'm reflecting on your presentation. Superb, thought-provoking, challenging. You always bring out something novel. That is what I was impressed by. At one point, I closed my eyes and thought deeper. And I thought I was listening to a saint. So if you will, from now on, I would call you Saint George Matthews.
Far from.
Outstanding. I mean, you have left us, or at least me, with more questions than answers. And then I know where to and how to reach you for further clarifications. My salutations to you. Thank you for putting this together.
You are always most kind, Rudra. Thank you.
Any other questions? George, I have a question. As an excellent presentation. And there's always a question comes up periodically, the spirituality and religion. And I'm sure both of them help in the mental well-being, both the religion and spirituality. Is there any difference as far as mental well-being in people who are spiritual and people who are highly religious?
An excellent question there, Pramod. Spirituality actually involves a change of reference. Most of us, when we seek something for ourselves, everything is in the context of ourselves. We are the starting point, and we think of everything as it relates to us. As we said during the talk, we soon realized that we are a tiny cog in an immense spiritual big wheel. And when we get to changing our reference point and seeing things from the context of that big wheel, that's when we get into spirituality, and we can have an, an innumerable number of consideration, concepts, debates with ourselves or with others about spiritual matters as we seek that enlightenment. Religion refers to an organized way of trying to provide those answers. And sometimes it's forced down on those who subscribe to those views. Religion sometimes is dogmatic, and sometimes religion loses that sense of exploration and wonder and appreciation of the big wheel and the unknown, and pretends that everything is known and finite, and this is how it is, and this is what you have to accept. Religions that can accommodate the unknown, the search that people engage in, are extremely beneficial. I personally ascribe my sense of peace, my sense of serenity to my faith. I'm a Christian by faith, and my faith in Jesus is what keeps me going. But I recognize that different people have to find the answer to their search themselves. And I remember, if I can just take a moment, when I was a teenager, I had some questions and went to my priest and had told him that I don't find the answers of a certain authority to be quite satisfactory. And I wanted to get away from the Bible and seek other answers. And I really respect his wisdom, because he told me, you are perfectly free to put the Bible aside and search for the truth wherever you want to. He said, I am confident that if you keep searching, you will come back to the Bible. But by all means, go and search in other holy books, search anywhere else. And I can't say I have conducted an exhaustive search of other religions, but I have found contentment in the answers I have found. But it's for each person to have their own questions and to reach their sense of contentment where they find it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, George, also in spirituality, there are so many different spiritual leaders all over the world.
Yes.
And on all different religions. But sometimes some of these spiritual leaders get to the point where, and I don't want to name any, get to the point where they actually do like a brainwashing. And we have to be very careful how far to kind of follow these leaders. Do you have any comments on some of this, how far the spirituality can go to the point?
Yes. Again, an excellent point. I would say the first quality to look for in a spiritual leader is humility. If they are not willing to acknowledge that they have only a limited view of the knowledge of what is out there, then they are probably a sham and they want you to come under their influence for whatever purposes. But it is that inherent humility to state that that big wheel is so vast, none of us can even get to a fraction of it. But if that spiritual leader says, I have a fraction of that spiritual big wheel, which satisfies me and could satisfy you, then it is worth listening to, studying more, following, or at least pursuing what they have to suggest or recommend. But be careful of anybody, any human being who claims to have all of the answers, because no single human being has them all.
There are actually some of these cults are forming under the name of spirituality, which is kind of sad to see that. But as you said, you have to be very careful how you follow a particular spiritual leader. Yeah. Any other questions there, Fuma? Go ahead.
May I? I don't want to take on too much time, but accepting that we are less than a minuscule in this whole universe. George, my question always is, some people may or may not believe in the afterlife and what is the second part of life and all that. But while you're seeking that, isn't that much better off while you're here now to do as much good as you can to the rest of the humanity? I mean, as much as you can, rather than waiting for something afterlife?
Absolutely. There is a recognition of virtue, and I didn't have time to get into, we talked about flow. Flow in life always brings out virtue. It brings out that which is good for yourself, that which is good for those around you, and that which is good for the world at large. And very often, as we individually seek those answers, what we find is that the areas that we seek them in needs to be areas that lead us to more of the virtue. And if we find that, then we are on the way, we are engaging in flow. If we are stuck in strife, if we are stuck in any kind of negativity or momentum away from that flow, then that's an indicator that we are on the wrong path.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I want to comment. I would like to, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, Mr. Bakul, go ahead.
I would like to refer to this lecture from time to time. Is there any way I can get it to my computer?
Bakul, I have recorded this show and George has agreed to share that. So I have your email, Bakul, and I will go ahead and send the recording tomorrow. The recording comes out very well. It's a cloud recording, and actually you can fast forward and listen to that at your own free time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Same thing with any other.
Yeah, Pramod, can you hear me, Pramod?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Dr. Matthews,
Mr. Raj Mehta from Nashville, George, you know George? George
yeah,
Raj
yeah.
Mehta from Nashville.
please.
What part, do you think meditation plays a really important role in reinforcing your own values and considering who you are and all that? Dr. George?
Yes, I would say absolutely so, because each one of us deals with innumerable distractions in life. There are so many things clamoring for our attention that usually our priorities tend to fall off. And meditation is a way of recentering ourselves, of deciding for ourselves what our priorities need to be, and to zero in on them so that we can reassign our priorities. Invariably, all of us find that our priority pile gets toppled by unexpected events or some things that have deadlines. And we find sometimes that we have gone way off course. But meditation is a very useful tool to recenter us. And especially if we practice meditation and prayer on a daily basis, it's an excellent way to recenter ourselves.
Thank you.
Ved, you had something?
I didn't get a chance to congratulate George. I didn't know exactly how you were going to do it in 1 hour, but I'm so happy that you gave us that spiritual experience rather than trying to get into details. You try to give that experience. I appreciate that. There were two cryptic messages you gave me, I thought, and I wanted you to tell me a little bit more concrete steps of towards the mental well-being. One is you said that you had to get beyond thinking that you're just a collection of billions of neurons in the skull, but you had to see yourself as a screen witnessing life in time and space. And I want you to tell me how that relates to spirituality. The second thing is you said that you had to have a meaningful relationship with the big wheel. And I didn't get an answer for that either. So if you can just give us a little bit about how you do it so that we can follow your example.
So I want to back up and say that I'm not at a stage where you need to follow my example. I'm happy to share what I do, and if it is of any benefit to you, by all means, do so. But I thank you for the questions. The first question, Ved, correct me if I haven't got it right. You were saying, how does each one of us, being these billions of neurons trapped in our bony vault, how does that relate to spirituality? Is that the question?
But you started from there and you explained us as more than just a billion of neurons, but a screen in which the life is getting played, all the experiences are getting played. And I thought that was a leap from the mundane neurons to the spiritual awareness that you're the witness.
Yeah. What I was building there was the recognition that day-to-day life, each one of us watching this screen, each one of us are doing it because there are images that get through our eyes, through our ears, that get processed in our mind right now to give us this sense of meaningful interaction or comprehension of what is going on. That's how the brain functions. But it's also helpful to recognize that all of our lives are a continuous movie with each one of us as the main character of that movie. And it plays out till we die. We are the hero of our own lives, but we are handicapped heroes because all of us have shortcomings. Within that context, we recognize that there is a much greater being, and that being, which is I referred to as the big wheel, simply out of the context in which it was taken, of the cog in the wheel, that we are part of a bigger whole. In just the same way that none of us is one particular neuron, it is a we. We are this set of cells that forms this sense of an individual. In the same way, when we look at the world at large, each one of us contributes to the wheel. We're not separate from the wheel, we are all part of the wheel. And we all have a role to play in how the wheel functions, albeit the wheel is managed and orchestrated by the one we may refer to as God. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, the comfort in the relationship between you, the small cog, to the big wheel, if it's a comfortable relationship,
Yes.
and you're feeling that non-separate connection, you're secure, and that gives you both spiritual well-being and mental well-being, because you're comfortable being the cog in the wheel. Is that the take?
Yes. Now, to the second question, I'm not here to foist my religious beliefs on anybody else, but I want to say that what my faith informs me is that there was somebody who came 2,000 years ago who claimed to be from heaven, who claimed that he had come to die and to offer anybody who believed in him eternal life. And true to what he had predicted, he died on a cross. He rose from the dead, though some people dispute it. And he has offered answers that I find satisfying. So to me, he is somebody worth following. His answers are satisfying to me. And I find that there is the answer to eternity, to life after death. And I want to say, though I may be proven wrong later, I would welcome death as a way to getting to that next stage, as a transition to the next stage that awaits me and all of us. So I just want to put out where I'm coming from, but I want to respect all of your views and religious or non-religious views of spirituality.
Thank you. I was looking at the spiritual aspect of this to connect to the mental well-being. The idea is that you develop that secure connection with the higher power, or whatever you think is the big wheel, or whether anybody thinks is a big wheel, and they have to make sure they keep staying connected in a healthy way or in a comfortable way, so that it'll give them the strength.
Yes.
Any other questions? You know, George, I have just read a quote from, you mentioned about the happiness.
Yes.
This is a very simple quote. I just have to say that once you learn how to create your own happiness, no one can take it from you. Simple thing. But so you have to create your own happiness. That is excellent talk. And again, let me remind you, this has been recorded, and George has agreed to go ahead and share the recording. And if you or your family or friends have missed this and want to listen to the recording, please send me your email and I'll forward the recording. Again, these recordings are also going to go in our website, icSSS.org, and all the recordings of this particular session, as well as the last 7 or 8 sessions, will be there. You may be interested in that, and you can log on that website and get the recording. Other requests I have is, you know, if you feel that we should have some other important topics, whether mental health or just general health topics, please let us know so we can try to get an appropriate speaker for that. And
Let's
again,
give you a round of applause, please. Everybody unmute.
thanks, George.
Thank you, George.
you.
I need to
Thank
leave.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful talk.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting and have a good weekend. Enjoy the weekend and stay safe from COVID. Get the 4th shot, the second booster. It is available for people over the age of, I think,
50,
50.
50.
Over the age of 50. We had our shot just couple of days, 4th shot just couple of days ago. And that way you can stay safe from this new Omicron. They call it a stealth Omicron or BA2 or something like that. So that's very contagious. Okay, use the mask. And okay, then I'm going to end the meeting for all. See you.
Thank
Bye.